Good afternoon. Welcome to Cool Springs. Today is Wednesday, December the 3rd, 2025. We are in the first week of the Advent season. And so as we are approaching Christmas, it seemed like a good time to do for our heroes and heroines of the church, St. Francis of Assisi, who lives in the 13th century, the 1200s. And most people associate St. Francis of Assisi with caring for and the blessing of the animals, but one of the things that he is responsible for is something that churches of all different denominations have a tendency to do at this time of year. They'll have manger scenes. They may have a manger scene on the front lawn of the church. They may have a tabletop manger scene inside their church sanctuary or a fellowship hall. We have one in both places here at our church. Or they may have a youth or children's group put on a nativity pageant where the kids are dressed up in costumes and somebody's holding either a live baby, if the church has a couple that's just had a young child, or a baby doll to represent the Christ child. And some of the little kids may be dressed up as little sheep at the manger scene. And we don't know where the tradition of the manger scene came from. Well, guess what? St. Francis of Assisi is responsible for that. One of the terms that's normally used, particularly in liturgical churches, to describe a manger scene is a crèche. And crèche is a French word that's based on an Italian word for the town in which St. Francis of Assisi in Italy came up with the idea of doing a nativity scene. Scholars have argued for many years on whether or not the actual place of Jesus' birth was a cave. So I borrowed one of our props from the children's Sunday school room that we normally use at Easter, thus the empty tomb rolling by here. But sure enough, there are a lot of caves in the hills around Bethlehem, and it is possible that the manger scene where Mary gave birth to the Christ child may have been one of the caves around Bethlehem, but it is also possible that it might have been a Sukkot, which is where most of our mangers look like. A Sukkot was a temporary shelter that Jews were required to build in the fall as temporary dwellings, and sometimes they would use them for a period of time to house animals, because it's three-sided usually, has a partial roof, and it would be a place that would have a modest amount of privacy. So I've got here a craft that we made in VBS one year where we have a couple of toy animals, a few toy sheep there, and I think this is a toy chicken. And then we let the kids put in these little holy families, Joseph, Mary, and the Christ child in there, and the kids got to build their own little nativity set. Well, St. Francis of Assisi set up in this Italian village a wooden manger scene type of shed, and he had people dressed up and playing the parts of Joseph and Mary and baby Jesus. And he also got a couple of animals, an oxen and a donkey, that he put in the very first manger scene that we have recorded in history, which would have been in the year 1223. His thinking behind it was, this is during the period when there are some crusades going on and the Ottoman Turkish Empire is in control of the Holy Land. So some people were wanting to make pilgrimages from Europe all the way to Bethlehem. But those who couldn't afford to do it, which was most people, St. Francis thought, well, there's another way we can celebrate the birth of Christ. We'll just create a little manger scene here in the town square, and people can come and worship God there. So some of the Christmas songs that we sing at this time of year that have lines in them about oxen asks, before him bow, in the manger now, Christ was born today, good Christian men rejoice is the name of that hymn, come from the fact that St. Francis chose to put in to the manger scene a donkey and a cow. Whether or not there were cattle in the manger in actual Bethlehem or not, that we don't know. Sheep probably nearby. The area of Bethlehem, 5 miles from Jerusalem, was known for raising sheep, particularly raising sheep that were going to be used in the temple sacrifice system. We know from the Gospel of Luke that there were shepherds out in the fields tending watch over their flocks, and that they were visited by first one angel, then a multitude of angels, telling them that the Messiah had been born and that they would find him lying in a manger. And so they secure their sheep and go to Bethlehem until they find the Christ child, and they worship him there. So sheep would make sense. Whether or not Mary and Joseph owned a donkey or not, that we don't know. They may have come down from Nazareth to Bethlehem. They had to come for the census, but they may very well have been on foot, or it is possible that they may have owned an animal. Since they were poor, in fact, Joseph has to pay the poor person's price when he goes to present baby Jesus at 40 days of age, because he can't afford anything higher. They may not have actually had a donkey. But yet, if you've got a manger scene at your church, undoubtedly, it's going to have a cow, it's going to have at least one donkey, it's probably going to have some sheep, may or may not have a chicken. Chickens were very common in that area, so it was entirely likely there may have been some chickens there. And it's also going to have wise men nearby with camels. Wise men weren't there at the actual birth of Christ. By the time they show up, Jesus is a toddler. So whether or not you have a manger scene that's made out of wood on 3 sides, or whether or not you think Jesus was born in a cave, either way, because we could put some of the animals out here, and I could take this, and I think it'll fit here inside the cave, and I could use this as a manger scene and let it do double duty at Christmas as well as Easter. This is a good time for you to be able to share with your family, because we are in the Advent and Christmas time of year, the fact that we put out manger scenes in our homes, in our churches, and we do Christmas plays focused on the manger, because St. Francis of Assisi, in the year 1223, came up with the idea that this is a way people can visually come and worship Jesus without having to travel thousands of miles to go to the place of his birth. So anytime you're having a nativity pageant at your church, or maybe you're going through some drive-through nativity that a local church is having, or you're just telling the Christmas story to your family and holding up a picture book, you can credit part of that to St. Francis. Thanks for watching.